Hi, this is Tony Northrup for TrainSignal, and in this video lesson, we're going to cover how to configure shared resources on Windows 8. This lesson maps to Objective 4.1 of the Microsoft 70-687 certification exam, and it has 6 sub-objectives. The first is to configure shared folder permissions that'll allow you to control which users can access the files on your computer over the network, and whether they can read or update the files. You'll learn how to configure home group settings. Home groups are this really simple way of sharing files and printers and music and pictures across a network between multiple different PCs, and it's usually used in homes, as the name kind of indicates, but it's on the certification exam. We'll also learn how to configure file libraries. Those are your documents and pictures and music and videos. They look like folders, they're actually libraries, and they're pretty cool. We'll learn how to configure shared printers so that you can take one printer and have everybody in your house print to the same printer. We'll learn how to set up and configure SkyDrive. SkyDrive is Microsoft's cloud file service where you can store files and access them from anywhere. It's pretty cool, and it's deeply integrated into Windows 8. And finally, we'll give a brief overview of Near Field Communication, NFC. It's a new feature in Windows 8, and it's not frequently used. NFC is mostly used for mobile payments from your smartphone, but Windows 8 happens to support it for file transfers, so I'll show you how to do that. Let's dig right in and learn how to configure shared folder permissions in Windows 8. This is my Windows 8 PC, so I'll jump to the desktop where I can access File Explorer. Now, within the Documents library here, I'm going to create a new folder so that I can share it. I'm clicking the New Folder button at the top. Now, just so we can know that it works, I'm going to add a file to my new Shared Stuff folder. Let's make a text document. And I'll edit the text document so that we can verify that we can see the contents of it across the network. So within the Documents library here, inside the My Documents folder, there's the folder I just created. Now to share it, I'm going to right-click it and then click Properties. From here, I'll go to the Sharing tab. Now there are a couple of different ways to share folders. The Share button here makes it really straightforward. It gives you a very simple wizard-based interface, and it's meant for home users. Let's not bother with that. Let's go to the advanced stuff. I'm going to click the Advanced Sharing button here, and this gives you just complete control. This user interface hasn't changed since, I don't know when, like Windows 3.1. It's exactly the same thing. So you can assign a different share name if you want to. By default, it's the same as the folder. I'll give you a hint. If you don't want the folder to appear when people are browsing the network, just add a $sign to the end. Just a secret. I'll go ahead and let it be browsable, so I'll remove that. Now, to control the permissions, to control whether other people can access your folder or not, you'll click the Permissions button here. And you can see the default permissions. The Everyone group has read access. Now, everyone is not really everybody. In fact, it's not very many people at all. That means that anybody whom you've created an account for on your computer will be able to read the files. Now, let's say we want to grant permission only to a specific user. I've created an account here called Sandy. So I just type that name and press enter, and it found it for me automatically. This happens to be a local account. However, in an Active Directory environment, you would use that exact same interface to select any user in the organization. So that's why it's not a kind of browse and select a user interface. That's why you have to type the name, because in an enterprise, there could be thousands or tens of thousands of people, and you wouldn't want to be browsing through everybody, and they don't really like to show you everybody on the network anyway. So you'll just type the person's name or email address, and you'll find them. Now, down here, we'll give permissions to this user I've specified. We can grant them change or full control access. So read, of course, lets you open files, lets you run applications too. Change lets you edit those files. Full control lets you change the file permissions. The file permissions are a second layer of security that applies equally well whether a person's accessing the files across the network or from the local computer. We'll go more into file permissions in a different lesson. Now there's another set of checkboxes over here, deny. If you deny somebody access, that overrides permissions that they might have through a group membership. So let's pretend that we don't want Sandy to have access to things, but we do want everyone else to have access. So what I'm doing here is I'll grant change access to everybody and then deny Sandy permissions. So with these two access control entries, what they call ACEs, I've granted everybody who has authenticated access to my computer the ability to change files for everything in this folder that file permissions don't otherwise override. And I've removed permissions from Sandy. This is something I really want you to understand, and it works exactly the same way for share permissions and file permissions. Deny always overrides any other permissions. So Sandy is a member of everyone, and everyone has change and read permission. However, Sandy won't get access because Sandy has the deny permissions over here. So that is about what there is to know about sharing permissions. So let's go back and we will do an actual scenario with that knowledge. So here's a real world scenario. You need to be able to share a file with somebody else on a different computer on your network. They want to read the file, but you don't want them accidentally making changes because it's got some pretty important stuff in it and you want to control the content. So we are going to grant read-only access to Mary, and then we're going to pop over to a different computer, connect to that shared folder, and open the file and see if we can edit it or not. So let's jump back to Windows 8. I will share this folder with Mary. You can see I'm opening up the properties and clicking the sharing tab. I'll go to the advanced sharing button here, choose to share it. I will grant Mary permissions, and then I will remove the everyone permissions. So let's investigate her permissions here. We want her to read but not edit, so she's got read but not change, and deny isn't selected because that would stop her from accessing it at all. So these look good. I'll click OK here, and let's pop over to Mary's computer. All right, so here we are on Mary's computer. We're going to pretend we're Mary. Let's open up the desktop so that we can get to File Explorer. Now, this is in a different place, but to connect to a shared folder, we're going to go to the Home tab up here, click the Easy Access menu, and then click Map as Drive. That's completely different from earlier versions of Windows. Now, to connect to a shared folder, you use what they call the UNC format, and they give you an example here. It's // server name, which in this case is Win82, and then the share name, which I specified as shared stuff. Now, Mary has an account on that computer, so she doesn't need to do anything, but if she needed to connect with a different username and password, she could select this checkbox here. And Mary's going to want to be able to access this same folder the next time she logs in, so she'll leave that reconnect at sign in checkbox selected. Now I just need to click the Finish button. Before I do, I'll mention that this is going to become a drive letter, just as if you connected a new USB drive. By default, it starts at the end of the alphabet, so Z is its default choice. And it connected successfully. You can see under Computer here, there's a new Z drive that points to the Win82 computer and the shared stuff folder, and I can browse it just like any other file on my local computer, except it's all happening over the network. I'll double click the shared file here to open it up, and let's just say Mary loves caps. Now that I've typed that and changed the file, I'll go ahead and save it. Now it's prompting me for a file name, which it normally doesn't do, and the reason is I can't overwrite it. That's because I denied Mary the change permission when I was sharing the folder. She's not supposed to be able to edit it anyway, so I don't know what she's doing. This is a very important file. All right, on to the next sub-objective. So consider this scenario. You're helping out a small business and they have 4 Windows 8 PCs. They want everybody to be able to share their documents and printers freely. They don't feel any need for security. They don't care if everybody can see every file, and they don't want to manage who can print to the printer. It's not an enterprise scenario. This is a small business scenario. These people don't have servers. They don't have an Active Directory domain. They just have their 4 Windows 8 PCs, and that's enough for them to get the job done. But they're not tech gurus. They want it to be easy. That's perfect for home groups. Let's walk through this scenario. Here's Mary's Windows 8 PC. To configure a home group, I'm going to open up the Charms bar, select Settings, and then click Change PC Settings. On the Home Group tab here, you'll see it tells you a little bit about home groups, and if there's not already a home group on the network, it will prompt you to create one. So I'll click Create to do that. And Windows 8 thinks for a little bit. Now you can use this page to configure what resources are shared from this particular computer. You can configure the Home Group tab here separately for each computer. So we wanted to share documents and printers. I'll just share those 2 resources. These other resources won't be available across the network. You can also choose to share with media devices. This is definitely a home rather than a business thing, but it's pretty cool. You can, if you have music on your computer, you can share this and then you can play the music from some radios or TVs. Now, this is important. See this series of numbers and letters here? This password is what you're going to have to type into the other computers in order to join the home group. So there is a bit of security. It's not user-specific security. All you have to do is copy this password from this computer to another computer. It's always going to show up here when you visit the home group page. So you can just have one person on their computer just holler it out to the other person while they're setting it up. So I'll write this down. Now let's pop onto one of the other employees' computers and see if we can't connect to these resources. So here I am on another employee's computer. I'll repeat the process of opening up the Charms bar, changing the PC settings, and going to the Home Group tab. You can see it says a home group is available. Mary on Windows 8 created a home group. Now I just need to type that password. See if I can type it correctly. And click Join. All right, so that worked. And as you can see, it's prompting me to determine what I want to share from my own computer. So it's not completely without control. Every user gets to configure what they can access. To browse the other files on the network, let's jump back to the desktop and open up Explorer here. You can see there's a new Home Group tab here that shows the individual resources that different users have available. And you can see the way it's organized is home group, and then Mary the user, and then Mary's computer. So if Mary's logged on to 3 different computers and has resources shared from each, you'll see all those different computers. And there'll be a separate entry here for every user participating in the home group. So drilling into her documents, I see Mary's stuff and Mary's file, and we can even open the file. Now, connecting to the printers is just as easy. We cover printers in another lesson, but once they're shared via the home group, it will simply appear as an option for any other user who attempts to print. Now, here's a different but closely related scenario. In this scenario, Mary has connected her laser printer to the old school LPT port on her computer. That's like an old parallel port, this big old connector. But it's an old printer and everybody wants to use it, and they don't all want to run big cables to the printer. Well, you don't have to. You can share a printer across the network. All the communications that would normally go to the printer get channeled across the network, and then the computer that's sharing the printer server, receives them and sends it out to the printer. So it's much easier than trying to run individual cables to printers. Now, nowadays, it's pretty smart just to buy a printer that connects directly to the network. They don't cost anything extra. They can connect to wired or wireless networks and then have everybody connect directly to it. But this is an objective on the exam, and it's still a pretty common scenario for small businesses using older printers. So let's jump on Mary's computer so she can share that printer. So I'm going to search the settings for printer. and then I'm going to open up the Devices and Printers Control Panel tool. You can't use the Windows 8 touch-friendly tools here to share printers except via home groups, which works too, but they want you to know how to do it both ways. So within the Devices and Printers Control Panel tool, here's her printer, Train Signal Printer. I'm going to right-click it, and you have a lot of options here. It's easy to forget which one you want. There's printing preferences and printer properties and just plain properties, and I don't know why they give you so many options. You want printer properties, not regular properties. And on the printer properties dialog box, you'll jump over to the sharing tab here. This works just like sharing files, basically. It's a little bit easier even. I'll select the share this printer checkbox, and again, I can assign it a name. Any name will do. Now, Mary's sharing this printer for everybody, and she sees this checkbox, render print jobs on client computers. It's not going to make a big difference whether you select it or not. The only reason you would clear this checkbox is if Mary's computer is big and powerful and everybody else's computer is small and light. But for the most part, you want the client computers to do the job of rendering the print job. It just makes them do a little bit of the work so it doesn't slow down Mary's computer so much. Mary doesn't want her computer slowed down, so she's going to leave that selected. And then we click OK. And that's it. Now, for other people to connect to that printer, they're going to need to know the name of the shared printer, which is Train Signal Printer, and the computer name. So I'll show you a quick trick for checking the computer name. I'm going to open up the WinX menu by holding down the Windows key and pressing X. Then I'm going to open up a command prompt. Now, the command prompt name for finding the computer name, hostname. Mary's computer is called Windows 8. So to connect to this shared printer here, it's going to be / Windows 8 / Train Signal Printer. Works just like the file sharing did. It's a standard UNC name. Now, let's jump over to another computer and connect to that shared printer. Here's another one of the employees who wants to print to her printer. From the start menu, I will once again search for printer. Search the settings, and I'll do this the old-fashioned way using the control panel tool. There's a button up here that says add a printer. Now you can see it'll automatically pull down network printers, but that's not what we want. We're going to click the printer I want isn't listed, and then we're going to specify a share name. / Windows 8 / Train Signal Printer. You can see it even, as soon as I typed the name of the Mary's computer here, it sent a query to her computer saying, hey, do you have any printers shared? And it came back and said, I have one called Train Signal Printer. So I could type it out. I'll make my life easy by just clicking that. And then I will click Next here. That's all there is to it. It's created a new printer and given it the default name Train Signal Printer on Windows 8. Now you're prompted to set it as the default printer, which is smart, and print a test page. There, it sent a test page indicating that the shared printer is up and working. How easy is that? No cables to run, everybody can print. Now let's talk about file libraries, or as most people call them, just libraries. Let's jump over to a Windows 8 PC. And all library configuration is done from File Explorer, and File Explorer is a desktop app. So I'll jump to the desktop and open up File Explorer. You can see the libraries icon here, and inside of it are the 4 default libraries: documents, music, pictures, and videos. Pretty self-explanatory. Now you can see they already have multiple folders in them. Libraries are not folders, and this can be really confusing because in earlier versions of Windows you had a My Documents folder, and it was literally just a folder, a location on your hard drive. But these new libraries, they serve a similar purpose, but they're libraries. They're something different than a folder. They're a construct that exists at a higher level. It's imaginary. It's not physically on your hard drive. On the other hand, the folders contained within it are literally folders. They have a physical existence. These libraries are organizational tools. Here's what they do. You know, some people will scatter their documents folders across multiple drives. Maybe they'll have a documents folder in the root of their C drive, and then they'll attach a USB drive permanently, and they'll have D:\documents, and they store documents in any of these folders. Well, that could be really confusing without libraries, because you'd have to think, where are my documents? Did I save them on my D drive or my E drive or in this folder? Well, you just put all the different folders that have stuff in your documents library, all the different folders that have videos in your videos library, your pictures, etc. So by default, Windows 8 and Windows 7 and Vista 2, they have a separate user-specific documents folder. That's why it's called My Documents. It's yours. And then they have public documents, which are automatically shared between other users just on the local computer, not users across the network unless you share it otherwise. So let's look at the documents properties here. I'm just right-clicking it and clicking properties. And you can see this is a list of all the different library locations, all the different folders that are part of the documents library. So let's add a new folder to the documents here. I'll just put it in my user profile. And I'm going to call it Other Documents, and I'll select it. So that was as easy as just clicking Add and following the prompts that appear. So now that we have another folder, the question comes up, when you go to save a file that would default to My Documents, where's it going to go? Is it going to go to your My Documents folder or this new folder that you added? You control that using the Set Save Location button here. So you just select the folder that you want to be the default and then click Set Save Location. You can click Set Public Save Location to choose the folder which public documents are stored in. Public documents are shared between users on the same computer or users in a home group. Down here you see some options. Optimize this library for just lets you select the file type. The difference is that for music, it's going to display it in Explorer using information about music files, like it'll show you the artist and the genre of the song. Now, on the other hand, if you're looking at pictures, it's going to show you thumbnails of the pictures. So basically it's how it's going to display it to you. Just select the type of file that it is. And I'll click OK here, and we can see that a new library is added here. Now, part of the magic of libraries is being able to search them all. So you can just select documents here and then search the entire documents library and have results come up from any of these different locations. So when you open or save files, you're still going to have to drill down into the specific folder that you want to use. However, they're organized nicely in a single library, and you can also open files from any of the folders by selecting this and then searching the entire set. It'll go out to all the subfolders in any of the libraries. If you know specifically that it's in your default My Documents folder, you could select that and search up here and make it a little bit faster. So libraries are an organizational tool. Now, they happen to be an organizational tool that Windows uses pretty pervasively. So if you open up the Photos app, it'll show you photos from anything in your Photos library. If you open up the Videos app, it'll show you videos from any folders in your video library. Same with the music. So if you find that you open up the music app and it doesn't have your music, well, it's probably because you didn't save it in your music folder. No problem. Go to Explorer, add whatever that folder is to your music library. There's no need to move files around or anything like that. Just put it in the music library, and then the next time you're in the music app, it'll be able to find it for you. On to the next scenario. Let's add a second folder to the pictures library. Let's say that Mary has saved some pictures that she wants to share with me. Now, she shared them through a home group, so they're accessible to the network, but when I'm on my computer, I don't want to be browsing to a different hard drive or browsing through the home group to find them. I just want to be able to search them right from my pictures library. I want them to also appear whenever I open up the Photos app. So let's pop over to my Windows 8 PC here. And of course, they're always configured from File Explorer. So I'll jump to the desktop. Now, first I'll find the folder. You could definitely do this by editing the properties of the library and then typing the whole location or browsing for it. You can also just do this. Just grab the folder that you want and drag it up to the library. And you'll see that as I'm hovering over it, it shows in the description, include in pictures library. So it's going to add it for me automatically. And voila, I can see the two folders on Mary's computer here. They're now part of my library. So now it's more accessible to me. If I want to search for an eagle here, There it is. It pops up automatically, even though it's on a different computer, even though it's in a different location. I'll jump back to the desktop. Now you notice when I dragged it up, it brought in her private pictures and then her public pictures, and there's nothing, nobody uses these public folders, so I don't want to clutter it up. I'm going to go ahead and remove that public pictures folder. So I'll select it here and then click remove. And just to make sure that it's all working transparently, I'll open up the Photos app here, go back to the root, and we can see just in the root pictures library that appears here, those are the pictures from across the network on a different PC, just as if they're on my local pictures folder. So adding other folders to libraries, smart and useful. Let's talk about Microsoft SkyDrive. SkyDrive is Microsoft's cloud data service. So by the word cloud, they really just mean that there's some servers out in the internet. You don't know how they work, you don't care, you don't know where they are, you don't know how many of them there are. It's this kind of shape that can change, but most importantly, you don't have to worry about it. That's the secret of any sort of cloud service. Somebody else is managing it for you. So SkyDrive stores your files in the cloud. You can upload your files there, and they're on the internet. You don't know where, and hopefully you don't care. They give you a bunch of free space. It varies exactly how much they give you, but on the order of 15 to 25 gigabytes, depending on the type of account you have. And you can pay for more space if you want it. Now, this is terribly useful, largely because it's integrated really nicely into Windows 8. So there's a SkyDrive app right on the Windows 8 start screen that you can use to access any of these files on the internet. And here's the great thing. Because they're in the internet, in the cloud, you can access them just as well from any computer or smartphone or tablet or other device as long as it has an internet connection. So for me, I can put files on SkyDrive. I have them synchronized automatically from my desktop computer. Then I can hop onto my laptop anywhere in the world as long as I have an internet connection and get to the exact same files from a touch-friendly interface. If I don't have my laptop with me, I can pull out my smartphone, my iPhone. There's a SkyDrive app and it gives me access to the same files. SkyDrive even lets you edit Word documents directly in the web interface. Now, they're not going to test you on the details of all of this in the certification exam, but I do want to show you how SkyDrive works and one scenario where it's particularly useful. Besides just sharing files with yourself on different PCs, you can use SkyDrive to share files with other people too. And this is great if you want to collaborate with somebody where you go back and forth editing the same documents, or if files are simply too big for an email attachment. So let's say I need to email a bunch of really large pictures to someone, but they would be too big for an email attachment. The email server would end up rejecting them. Here's what I could do with SkyDrive. From the Windows 8 start screen, I'll start the SkyDrive app. And you can see it automatically logged me into SkyDrive because I've logged in with my Microsoft account. If you use a local account, it'll just prompt you for your Microsoft account username and password, and even gives you a link to create a new account if you don't yet have one. So to share multiple files, the easiest thing to do is to create a folder and then share that whole folder. So within SkyDrive, I'll open up the app bar by either swiping up from the bottom or right-clicking. Now I'll click the New Folder button. I'll call it Bird Pictures. And with the folder created, I'll select it, and now you can see it's telling me there's nothing in here. So I need to now upload some files. Once again, I'll open up the app bar, and then this time I'll click Upload. And what you see here is basically the File Open dialog box that you would have used in Windows 7, except it's a touch-friendly interface. So I can use this to browse to any file or folder on the computer. My pictures are under the Pictures folder here. So you can see I have 9 pictures here. And I can select them individually by either flicking them with my finger or right-clicking them. I can also open up the app bar and click Select All. So I have all those selected, and I will choose to add them to SkyDrive. Now you can see it's going to take a minute to upload them. If you want to view the progress here, you can click that and it will show them as they're being uploaded. So this demonstrates one of the downsides to working with a cloud service. You have to wait for things to get transferred. And if you're working with huge files, like let's say a book, it's going to be a little bit slow when you go to access it from a different computer because it's got to download everything across the internet. Now it does this pretty smart, and in fact there's a SkyDrive desktop client that instead of having you access everything online, it actually synchronizes it, so it copies it to and from your local computer automatically. That can make things a little snappier. So my 9 photos have been transferred to the bird pictures folder on my SkyDrive. Now I just need to share it. Now, if you recall, you don't share things by opening up the app bar. There's nothing here about sharing. It's a little tricky. You need to open up the charms bar. So I'm going to hold down the Windows key and press C. You could also swipe in from the right side and then click the share charm. Now I'll pick email to share it via email. And I'll just put in my own email address. So you can see what it's going to do here is it's not attaching the pictures. Instead, it's giving the recipient a link to SkyDrive. If you look at the URL, you can figure out how it works. This is, of course, HTTPS, which means it's encrypted. This is the URL of the website, skydrive.live.com. Reader here is just the name of the page. It's going to redirect them to the actual folder. Now we see a couple of pieces of information here. We see res ID, which is their resource ID, and then this long series. That uniquely identifies the folder I'm sharing. And then we see auth key here. This is a separate parameter. You can see it's separated by an ampersand. And this is a long string that basically authenticates the user. Well, it authorizes them, as is indicated in the name, and just says, hey, this guy didn't just guess a resource ID, he's also got this key. So he's got both these pieces of information. We're going to go ahead and let him view the files. This just prevents other people from somehow stumbling across your files. Not that it's impossible, but it feels pretty secure to me. So I'll send this message. Now I'll jump back to the desktop and check my email. Here it is. I will just click this link. And you can see the 9 bird pictures are displayed. This is in a web browser. This is exactly what the recipient would see. So we've successfully transferred these large files without using an email attachment. I also want to kind of show off how SkyDrive is smart about presenting it. Now, if I'd sent a bunch of Word documents, it would have simply listed the files, but it's smart about the file type. It recognized that I sent pictures, and instead of just showing the file names or a list that you could click, it actually generates nice little thumbnails for you. They can also click them and see a slideshow. And if they want to see the original higher resolution picture, you can just right click it to either download it or to view the original file. So what you can see here is it really zooms in nice and tight. So even though it processed the images to make them easier to view on a browser, it also allows you to view the original file in all of its resolution. So SkyDrive makes sharing easy by storing the files on the cloud, and it's also intelligent about how it handles different file types, giving the user a very friendly presentation. Now I'd like to talk about Near Field Communication, NFC. NFC is basically, it's for your smartphone so you can pay for stuff. For example, if you have an Android smartphone that has NFC in it, you can go into a Starbucks and tap a receiver with your phone and pay for it that way. Your phone has your credit card information in it, and it uses the near field communication to pass the payment information wirelessly to the receiver. Now, near field communication is quite literal. It's really, really near field, like less than an inch. That's why it's often called tap and send. You physically need to touch the devices together for them to communicate, and it doesn't need to communicate a lot of data. Often near field communication is just sending across a credit card number and a couple of bits of security information. Sometimes for bigger file transfers, near field communication is used simply to establish a Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connection that has more bandwidth and range. Anyway, near field communication provides very close range wireless communication, and it's a really new technology. By far, most of the adoption so far has been in smartphones. There are a couple of Windows 8 computers that support NFC, and Windows 8 technically supports it, but I'm not sure why it's on the exam because there's nothing to configure. Well, I'll show you one thing that there is to configure. There is this one little on-off switch. So you can flip that over to off and turn NFC off. That's all there is to configure, and I don't even know why you'd want to turn it off. I guess if you never used it, it couldn't hurt to turn it off. Now, if you're one of the lucky few who have a Windows 8 PC with NFC built in, and you have some other device with NFC, for example, a modern Android phone, you could use NFC to transfer a file between the two devices. In Windows 8, you would open up the Devices charm and then select the Tap and Send icon. Then on your phone or other device, you would tap it against the little NFC icon. It might look like that on your computer. It might be somewhere else. You can't just wave them near each other. You physically need to tap the NFC icon on your phone against the NFC icon on your computer. It needs to be really close together, and that will allow them to initiate the transfer. Now, if you want to receive a near-field communication file on a Windows 8 computer, you would, of course, initiate it on the sending device. Then a notification would appear in Windows 8. You could click it, and that will open up the Tap and Send app, which will confirm that you want to receive it because they want to make sure that it's not being used by a hacker. So you'll select the files that you want and then just click receive, and they'll get transferred over to your computer. Now, I'll warn you, I've played with NFC some, and it's not really done. Like, it's an open standard, but it's not really coming along all that quickly yet. So you could use it to transfer a simple file, and I was able to get a picture sent between a Windows 8 computer and an Android phone. But when I tried to transfer a video file, it didn't work out, and lots of other file types just didn't work. Things became corrupted, and you got weird error messages. So it's not quite there yet. It's not commonly used. And Microsoft is really just dipping their toe in the water. I can tell this because there don't seem to be any group policy settings to configure NFC. There's literally just the one on-off switch in the PC settings. This is Tony Northrup for TrainSignal, and I hope you found the lesson both educational and enjoyable, and I'll see you next time.